Welcome. Hi, I'm Mikki, and this is Mikkipedia, where I sit down and chat to doctors, professors, athletes, practitioners, and experts in their fields related to health, nutrition, fitness, and well-being. And I'm delighted that you're here. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mikkipedia. It is Mikki here, obviously, and today I'm super excited to bring to you my conversation with Sandi Nypaver. So Sandi is an ultra runner and a running coach. She is the co-director of Higher Running, which she co-founded with her boyfriend Sage Kennedy, and that is their running company which they have built over the years to be super successful and supportive of runners of all abilities and budgets finding their passion and their direction in running. So Sandi and I had such a good conversation, and I caught up with Sandi just in her build up to the Broken Arrow 50k that she did as a training run in the lead up to her most recent 50 miler, one of the first ultras that she's done in a while, Run the Rock, which she took out as first female and was 7th overall. So that was such an amazing result for Sandi, because she has experienced, a number of years of just getting to the bottom of a particular injury, and she's just really worked her way back to being fit and fast and strong. So we talk a little bit about that journey actually, in addition to her growing up as a twin, her identity as a runner as she was younger and how that has changed over time, the sliding door moment that changed the course of her life and the direction that she was taking, how she has coped with grief, and we talk a little bit about that. She's certainly had her fair share over the last few years, and she's shared this with her audience. So Sandi has a YouTube channel called Running Wild, and I'll pop that in the show notes, where she shares so much useful information on life, running, and life in Colorado actually in general, and I just absolutely love following her channel. Also, her plans with Higher Running, her run coaching company that, as I said, she is a co-founder of with her boyfriend Sage Kennedy. And we didn't talk about this, but most recently, in fact, her and Sage had a devastating house fire where the apartment block where they lived burnt down, in fact, and so they moved out of Boulder, Colorado, and have very recently created a new home in Saladino. So we didn't talk about that because that happened after our conversation, but you can catch up on all of that on Sandi's YouTube channel and also her Instagram. You can find Sandi over on Instagram at Sandi Nypaver. That is SandiNypaver, and over at Higher Running as well. And on YouTube, her YouTube channel is called Running Wild, and there are so many great videos there for anyone who's keen on the ultra running scene and want to see what a day in the life is like living, coaching in Boulder, in Colorado, and she shares some amazing tips over there. Before we jump into the podcast though, just to remind you, the Recipe Access is one of the best ways that you can support the podcast, and you guys have been amazing. We're so thrilled with the reviews that we've been getting and the support that we've been getting. And for $12 a month, you get access to over 600 recipes, the ability to pick my brain on anything related to your own nutrition through our online member portal. You get online written forums on a Tuesday night, pretty regular Facebook Lives, and the nutrition support that you might be after to tweak your already awesome approach. You can sign up for that over on MikkiWilliden.com, and you can leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That would be amazing. Until then though, please enjoy my conversation with Sandi Nypaver. Sandi, nice to see you this morning. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And I think that you'll appreciate this, I just did a bit of a workout at home because we are currently locked down, and I was training for an ultra, which probably won't go ahead. And then strangely, as always, actually, you know the glute med muscle, I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, not that we know anything about it during running. Like, it's like we don't even have a glute med until, of course, we get injured. And then suddenly it's like, hang on, were you switching that on? And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm a runner. Of course I haven't been. So I've been doing my home gym workout and doing a bit of that sort of rehab stuff. How about you, Sandi? Have you been in the mountains this morning?
Not today. Today was actually like a pretty flat run. I have a race next week, and it's a mountain race. It was a 50K, but they just shortened the course up a little bit, so now I think it's like 45K.
Okay.
But so I'm like kind of tapering at the moment. I still did I was kind of doing more mountainous trail runs on Tuesday and Wednesday. But the next couple of days, I know I just need to keep it flat now and hold back a little bit, which is hard because it just turned fall here. But the weather's still pretty nice. There's not a lot of snow in the mountains, and it's like so tempting just like get up high and like soak in like these last, I don't know, you never know, weeks or days of snow-free running in the mountains.
Totally appreciate that. And I wonder how much of that sort of pulling back and holding yourself back, I wonder how many conversations you might have with the people that you coach about things like that, because we're so passionate about our sport, right? And for a lot of us, we do it because we just love being out amongst it. And you're always sort of fighting that voice in your head that's sort of saying, no, be sensible, hold back, be it because of injury, because of tapering, anything like that, versus but I really want to go out and just sort of get amongst it.
I know, and I feel like I have a lot of pressure on myself, like to do the right thing, to be an example for my athletes, which is probably good for me to have that, because like it is very hard to hold back, and that is a conversation I have with some of my athletes, and it's probably more my athletes who live really close to the trails or the mountains. I think for some others it can be easier, and it's a time to like refresh and even though like a race is coming up, it can be kind of nice to like focus on other things and get other things done during the taper time. But for people like me who are like just like extremely motivated by just like going for adventures, then it's like it's a little bit more tricky in how to tell people to hold back.
Totally. And I follow your YouTube channel and I follow you on social, and I love the videos that you upload because it shows such a passion for the running, the sport, for women running as well, but also that adventure side of it. And I find it interesting, Sandi, because this is what I want to talk to you about, is sort of how you developed or found that real sense of adventure and passion for the outdoors, because as I understand it, as you were growing up, it wasn't like you were nurtured into that environment from a young age. Am I right about that?
That's exactly right. My mom, it was actually my mom, she took us camping every now and then. But otherwise, like I grew up in a town or a city called Cleveland. And so it's big city, but kind of like lived a little bit outside in the suburbs, but like there wasn't any nature around. Like I had no idea what trail running was until I was in college. Even just going like hiking anywhere, was just kind of odd, or like the outdoor and like adventure stuff, like going on like multi-day treks, like it's totally like not even my arena or something I thought about. But what actually happened was in college, I had a really interesting experience where, hopefully I won't make this too long. I was home for the summer, taking like summer break from college, and I actually had my alarm set to go to like this gym class like early in the morning. But for some reason, my alarm didn't go off. And I was kind of like upset at first, but then I was like, okay, I'll just do my own workout at home. And then for some reason, when I went to the bathroom to like brush my teeth and stuff, I decided to turn on the radio instead of like playing my Blink-182 CD like I was doing every morning. And these two guys came on the radio. They were being interviewed by the radio station, and they were talking about this youth expedition they were putting on. It was their first youth expedition, and they were going to the Akshayuk Pass in northern Canada, which is a really remote area. And they said, they were taking applications, but the period just closed. But for some reason, it sparked my interest, and I went to their website. I found the application for this youth expedition, and I was late, but I applied anyway. And after a series of interviews, they still ended up accepting me for this 10-day trek across the Akshayuk Pass in Daphne Island, Canada. And so, I went on this 10-day expedition, and the guides were a lot of ultra runners, and they just told me about all these adventures they went on. I was like, oh my God, they made a life out of this. And I fell, as soon as I did that trip, I fell in love with outdoors and just going on big adventures. And it really drastically changed the whole path of my life. It's really why I even moved to Colorado, and it just gave me this idea that you could actually build a life off of adventure. So that's kind of why I am where I am now. So thank you. Impossible to Possible was the name of the organization that got me started.
I think that is such an amazing story, because I've heard you talk about it briefly prior to this, and I just thought it's such a sliding doors moment, because I think, that Gwyneth Paltrow movie, where just a single second sort of changed the entire course of sort of where you were going, and potentially, of course, you've obviously got something inside of you that sort of made you take that chance and had that courage, and potentially there would have been an opportunity later on, because sometimes potentially this is, that's just the path you were always intended to follow. But I just absolutely love that story, because I think the easy and the easy and the safe thing to do would have been to go, oh, no, I can't possibly. How could I possibly do that? Particularly because, as it sounds the way that you describe it, that it wasn't even on your radar before that.
No, it totally wasn't. And I just think about how incredible it is. Yeah, I would like to think that if that didn't happen, it was something that was meant to be, and another experience would have came around. But it just worked out so beautifully, and I still could have talked myself out after of not taking the next step. But and I was someone who's typically scared and always nervous to make a decision, but I let myself get excited and follow what I was passionate about. And I think that was another thing about having good role models on the trip, of inspiring me to it's okay to be scared, but if you feel passionate and excited about something, it's worth exploring.
Yeah, totally. Now, Sandi, you're a twin.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I'm a twin as well.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah. Now, however, it seems that so we're very different, me and my sister, and we're it's awesome, but we're very different.
Mm-hmm.
You and Ray appear to share a lot of the similar passions and things like that. So when you were growing up, I've heard you just sort of say that you didn't really identify as a runner. Was Ray different from that? Was Ray adventurous, or was it, how's that? Yeah, how was that when you guys were both growing up? How different were you?
It's really interesting to look back on, because we've always been very similar. And yet, I think when we were younger, we were on parallel but separate paths. And that we had similarities, but for some reason, we just weren't meshing together. We were not close when we were younger. And I think it's because we both had so much going on, different mental health issues, and it caused us to be separate. When looking back, it's not we should have connected over this and helped each other out, but we were too young to know. And so I think we both kind of forgave ourselves for that. It was just we were kids, and we didn't know how to deal with our emotions and stuff. But at the same time, I think it ended up bringing us together as we got older, because we had these experiences and we wanted to use some of the lessons we learned, and not our best experiences, to use it in a way that serves others. And so now, even though we do different things, to an extent, actually she's a coach for higher running too, but she also has a therapy business that we've really dedicated to using what we've learned to do our best to help others. But to go back to running and stuff, because you mentioned that, you're right that when we were younger, we didn't identify as runners, but funny enough, we both loved running. And we would, even though we were close, we kind of like push each other to go on these like endurance runs. And so even like when we were in middle school, we'd be going on like 1 to 2 hour runs like once a week. And we just say it was training for like basketball or something. But it's honestly like probably like the funnest thing we did together when we were younger was like we push each other to go on these runs, and like everyone thought we were crazy because like no one did that where we lived. Like it's like, why are you going to run for that long? So like it's really funny to look back on. Like I always loved running, like more than like the other sports I did, but like it wasn't a thing to do where I grew up. Like we were very a team sports centered city.
You must hear that a lot, and I hear it a lot from people that I work with. So as a nutritionist, I don't, I'm not a running coach or anything like that, but when I'm asking people about the activity they do, they're often like, oh yeah, I run. Oh, I'm not a runner. Do you hear that a lot with people you work with?
I do. And even, so I know like men would say they identify that with that statement too, but I honestly hear it mostly from women. And I can't tell you how many emails I used to get from women saying, am I fast enough to be coached by you? And that just killed me because they identified like their self-worth or their worthiness of having a coach by how fast they could run. Yeah. And so I think that's changing now. But yeah, that was always heartbreaking for me to hear, but it's also like such a great opportunity to have somebody reframe their mindset. Be like, if you want a coach and like you're paying for it, have whatever coach who has like open spaces. Like it doesn't matter how fast you are, at least like in my opinion. Like I'll coach whoever like seems to like, if we fit together, like I don't care how fast somebody runs. I'm a coach to like help people perform their best wherever they're at, and hopefully they just enjoy it a ton along the way.
And Sandi, like obviously you've always been active. Were your parents active? Were they the ones sort of pushing you into sport growing up, or was it just everyone just played sports, so that's just what you did?
I think that's kind of where I found a place to somewhat fit in. I wouldn't actually say it was my parents. Like my dad, he would coach some of like when we were little, like 5 or 6, or even a little bit older. He'd try to help out and coach some of like the teams we were on with other parents. My mom is she's honestly more athletic than my dad. She's definitely like, she'll still go on hikes and walks and stuff. And she's definitely the one who got me in the outdoors. And like my mom, like she was great. Like I could be wearing like a nice outfit, and if I got dirty, she wouldn't care, or she would tell me to go play with the boys. Like my mom was pretty tough, and so she didn't care what I did. But I think honestly what got me into it is like 3 boys lived across the street from me, and I just wanted somebody to play with, and they were like always playing different sports, and like it was fun. And so that was really like how I started playing sports. And it was fun to like be part of a group back then, I guess. Like I think I was always searching just for a way to fit in, because I always felt like I didn't fit in. So even though like I think I focused too much on sports and limited myself in that way when I was younger, because I think I was like always like, okay, I should be all in to fit in, but like I had other interests that I could have explored more.
Yeah. Where does that come from, Sandi? You've mentioned a few times that you don't feel like you fit in. Like, have you ever sort of thought about that? Like, where that sort of thought originated from?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I think it came from different family experiences. It is not a reflection of my family at all. Everybody's always doing the best they can. But I think like it was hard for me when my parents got divorced. And like I was a really strange kid. Like my sister was my twin sister. She was like daddy's girl, and my sister Amanda, she was always like with my mom. And I always had this dilemma of like which parent to go with. It's like I don't want to make anybody feel bad, and so like I need to make sure I split my time equally, even though if I want to be with the other parent because what their activity sounds funner. But then I always kind of felt like, okay, so and so is my dad's favorite, so and so is my mom's favorite, and I just don't really fit in. And I think like it wasn't true. It's just something I thought when I was younger, and I repeated it to myself over and over again. And I realize that now, and I think that I brought that into like school and social situations. And I know a lot of people, I've heard this a lot from people, like they feel like they don't fit in. And something I've realized now is like, sometimes that's something I tell myself, and it's not necessarily true because everyone's different. Everyone's meant to be different.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you don't fit in a way. Like, I think everyone's meant to fit in somewhere, but you're also meant to be different in yourself while being in different social situations. And so it's partly like accepting myself for who I am, and being comfortable in whatever situation I go to, no matter what.
Yeah, it's interesting that don't fit in space. It's sort of, and the stories that you tell yourself, right? Because particularly when we're young, and I often reflect back on just a couple of sort of key things that a couple of adults in my life that weren't necessarily close, but that I had sort of relationships with. And, you know, I can even sort of say verbatim the things that they said to me, which really sort of changed my thinking about myself, you know, and now here I am at like my mid-40s and I still think about it. And it's those the pathways in your brain just get really well sort of oiled, if you like, on that thought pattern, that it takes a lot of work to tell yourself a different story. And that is something I hear you talk about all of your time in your YouTube videos, which is one of the reasons why I love it. Not only do you get to show me like Colorado and Boulder and how beautiful it is there, you're always really open about, you know, your frame of mind and what you're going through, and also how to sort of get through something and how you deal with it, which oftentimes, you know, it's all about mindset.
You totally just made my day for saying that, because that is really how I hope to come across, and that you picked up on that. It really means the world to me right now. So thank you so much for saying that.
Totally, Sandi. It's so obvious. And I think that's just one of the best things about seeing someone like you being so open with the fact that, yeah, you live in one of the most amazing places in the world, and you have what people could say is like, no one's got a dream life. That is, you know, and obviously we all know that, but to be able to sort of live through and live through your running and do what you love is something that we all, you know, anyone would want to be able to do. Yet you also, you know, you share the bits that aren't easy, and that, you know, and how you feel about them, and then how you work through them. And I think that's a skill that not a lot of people have. And I imagine you must bring that to your coaching and really help your athletes as well, sort of, you know, make that sort of shift with mindset. And I've been thinking a lot about mindset this year. I've read Dina Carter's book, Let Your
I
Mind
love
Run.
her book.
Oh, it's amazing, right?
And what you were just saying, like with her book, like she shows how to apply it. And that's why I like, out of other mindset books, I love the practicality of how she wrote that book.
I totally agree. Sandi, obviously that sliding doors moment, you had to be brave to sort of take that step. Were people surprised around you? You know, like you were sort of almost choosing to do something to almost be a different person in that one moment. Did that surprise the people close to you that you wanted to do that?
You mean like just choose the adventure route?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I don't know if people were surprised. I think they thought it was an interesting route, and they weren't sure I was going to make it. And I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And there was definitely a couple years where it's like, this isn't working out. And that's actually probably something good to talk about is, you know, I moved to Colorado and I felt pretty comfortable like the first year. But then like I moved to Boulder because I met Sage, and I was really struggling to live in Boulder the first year, and which is interesting because in the US, like Boulder is known as like it's typically rated as like one of the happiest cities in the US. Yeah. And so like I was struggling in one of the happiest cities in the US, which is like it was a weird situation, but like I couldn't find like work I was passionate about, and so like it's also a very wealthy place to live. And so like here I am like broke and unhappy in Boulder, Colorado. And it took me a while to get out of that situation and to really like reframe things. And yeah, that's like another like kind of like a moment when I was living here where somebody just asked me to coach them and they believed in me, where like there was a door and I could say yes or no. And I wasn't sure if I should believe in myself to say yes, but I did because it just sparked this excitement and joy in me. So it's like, okay, I'm going to coach you. And that really sparked my entire business right now. And the business I'm obviously like very passionate about.
Yeah, for sure. Because as I understand it, you packed up after college in a car and just drove over to Colorado, I believe. And please correct me if that is not correct. And then sort of lived out of your car for a few good months as you sort of explored the area and sort of tried to find a bit of maybe find your feet a little bit. But that was before you then moved to Colorado, and Boulder. And that's when you started kind of going, oh my goodness, what's going on. Got that right?
Funny is like it was easier for me to like live out of my car and camp for months than to like live in Boulder and not like feeling like I had a purpose. Now, don't get me wrong, like I was not used to camping in the mountains with bears and mountain lions, and so I was terrified the first time like I slept in a tent and was like, oh my god, a bear is gonna come up and start circling my tent, and I was like in tears like those first couple nights, but then I loved it. And like looking at from the outside, people are like, okay, this woman has nothing going on. She's like living on her tent, trying to figure out what to do. I feel like now like it's becoming more acceptable, but like 10 years ago, a lot of people thought I was crazy. But to like go back a little bit, I did have a job that I came out for. I ended up deciding it wasn't the right fit. And so that's kind of how I ended up living out of my car and camping for a couple months. And then eventually, like, and this had always been on the back of my mind, is to apply for an AmeriCorps position. And AmeriCorps it's basically this government, I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, but it is like the government providing a year's service to like a nonprofit. And so I ended up getting selected for this AmeriCorps position at the Boys and Girls Club, which is like an after school program for kids where they can go after school, they can get homework help, they can have different activities. And so I did that for, ended up being almost 2 years in a very small town of Buena Vista, Colorado, although I was actually living in Salida, Colorado for part of the time. But there's like very small mountain towns in Colorado, and I still like adore those areas. And if you like watch my YouTube videos, I have many videos from Salida and Buena Vista area.
Yeah. And what is were you were obviously running at the time, Sandi? Was that sort of, were you like going to different races? Like how was your running sort of progressing over your sort of college years post sort of doing your big trip?
So like the running in Colorado was like so much better than running in Ohio, though I do appreciate some of the trails in Ohio now, but like I could run trails from my doorstep and like every direction. Like I could pick a different route and go up a different mountain, and that I loved. But I also like, I was working this job. I was living in high altitude for the first time, and I was way too motivated, and I just was running a ton. And I didn't know as much as I know now, and I was actually pretty overtrained and like not sleeping enough, and I wasn't adjusting to the altitude because of all of that. And so even though I had a lot of great trail runs, my racing like definitely went downhill for a few years because of all those things.
Yeah. Did you have a coach at the time, or mentors, or people that helped guide you?
I would sometimes talk to like the people I met from Impossible to Possible, but otherwise like I got in the bad habit of just following people on social media and seeing what they were going to do. And of course, like back then, like a lot of people were just running like really high mileage, and I was not ready for that. Like my body held up. I was just tired.
Do you know, it's funny. I was, I may have mentioned this, or not to you, but before on the podcast that I got super inspired by the movie. I want to say it's called Unbreakable, and there were these, 4 runners, and they were all training for. I'm very vague on the details, but I want to say it's either Leadville or Hard Rock or.
I got you. unbreakable as Western states.
Thank you. And then I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Look at how much they're just out there running all day. Then I Google like all of them and like chronic fatigue, no longer running, so I appreciate what you're saying with, it's very easy to look on social media and see these people doing these amazing, what appears to be amazing feats, but not necessarily, for the benefit of their sort of longevity in the sport. Not that all of them are out of the sport now, but it just, it's easy to get caught up in it.
Well, I do think like all of them, like, or most of them ended up taking like down periods. And that's kind of what it, like, yeah, like, and that's what happens. But even though I have that experience too, I'm almost, I don't want to say it's like that happy it happened, but at the same time, like, I'm a better coach because of it.
Totally.
And I'm like, I feel pretty confident in talking people out of those situations where they're tempted to do too much. But sometimes as a coach, I also realize like I can't control everything. And sometimes people just have to go that route and see for themselves. And it's, as much as like I try to talk them out of it, like I can't. And so have been times where I've seen people like do more than they should because of just seeing other people. And it's like, I can help you as much as I can. I can be the compass, but I can't steer your ship.
Totally.
So that's something I remind myself of every now and then. But normally, I am pretty good at like being a voice of reason when it gets tempting to do too much.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate what you're saying when, your experience has given you that sort of knowledge to be able to then, share that with your athletes, because it is really sort of part of that kind of life journey that sort of then informs how we might coach people or what we tell people about. Like, if you don't have that experience yourself, then you can only sort of speculate or look from the outside at someone else's sort of experience to be able to share with people.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of like the fun thing about like still like trying to compete myself and being a coach at the same time, where it's very easy to relate. So as I get older, I'm trying to like write down and like remember everything now. So like if I'm ever not competing as much, like I can still coach people to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Now, Sandi, as I understand it, you had a pretty major injury maybe a couple of years ago where one of the health professionals basically said, Sandi, I think it's all over for your running. You're going to have to try and find something else. Can you sort of describe that experience and then what happened and then sort of how you initially responded to that sort of idea that running wasn't for you?
So this has actually been a very long journey, over 8 years. So, but like you were talking about experience that happened 2 years ago, but to backtrack, I had Achilles issues for a really long time, like 8+ years. And I'm losing track of time and I'm not good at remembering dates, but it's like 5 or 6 years ago, I had my first Achilles surgery. And it helped a little bit, but not that much. And after a while, like seeing like physical therapists and stuff, they're like, you can keep running through it. Like the rest doesn't seem to be helping you either. So, I just kind of got used to ignoring the pain. But it was definitely hurting me. Like it, like even though they said like it was okay to like run through it, I feel like it just ended up really throwing my form off. And then I was always kind of worried to take those first couple steps of my run. Like it was kind of stressful. It definitely took away some of the joy from running. But sometimes I could block it out. And I'm like sometimes too motivated and too good at blocking pain out. And so, I trained through it. Sometimes my Achilles held me back in races. Sometimes I could totally block it out for a race and I had to have a really good race. But then a couple years ago, I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's too mentally taxing to have to deal with this. And it also felt like it was kind of getting worse. And so I went back and got MRIs done and went to see multiple doctors. And like the one doctor through my insurance company, and this is after like having other doctors say, okay, this guy's better, go see him. And so I go see like this like main doctor who is used to doing surgeries. He took a look at my MRI. He's like, this looks really bad. You should just pick a different sport. He's like, I could do these 2 other like major surgeries. And he's like, but you'll probably still never run like as good again. And I didn't like that opinion.
Yeah.
I definitely had a moment after where I sat in my car and just was in tears, oh my God, this is the worst news ever. And then I was driving home and it's let's get a different opinion. And so there's CU Medicine here, right in Boulder. It's a mile away from where I live. And so they have some doctors who are really used to working with athletes. And I got the second opinion. Actually, this is probably the third opinion. And he's you should really try this treatment called shockwave or EPAT therapy. He's it might not work, but it could. You've tried everything else. I would highly suggest you at least try this before having this major surgery done. And so I tried it, and I actually typically some people just do one round of it. I ended up doing 2 rounds over the course of a few months, and it was it was a miracle.
So what does it do, Sandi? Can you describe to us?
It basically stimulates your tendon to start healing again. So if you think of, I had a long-term chronic injury. I think I was running, my body got so used to having it where it's okay, I'm not going to put energy towards healing and reconstructing you anymore, even though that's what our body should be continually doing. Sometimes it breaks down, but it should build back up, where I think my body just kind of not going to waste our energy healing your Achilles anymore. And so this re-stimulated that healing process. And so it allowed my Achilles to get stronger again. But with that said, so I did that. My Achilles felt great, but all those years of running through pain, it really hurt my motor patterns for running. And so what's almost more frustrating than being in pain is my Achilles felt good. And then I felt I couldn't get both my legs to work the same way because I was just so used to overcompensating. And so that's been another journey to get through. And really it's only just started getting where I feel really good running again. I feel both my legs are working how they're supposed to. But it's been a really long journey. But I kind of love the journey because at the beginning of it, I identified too much with my performance. I started running because of the adventure and because I loved it. And then I was really hard on myself about wanting to perform a certain way. And, which is, it's easy to do, especially in a place like Boulder where there's competitive and really good athletes all around. And instead of having people or using those people as motivation for me to get better, in all aspects of my life, I was just comparing myself. But throughout this entire process, it gave me a lot of time to work on that and how I wanted to be running again. And what really sparks my joy with running is I love being at races and I love racing, but I have to always put my adventure and fun first. And I realized I can do that in a race situation still. A race can be fun and it can be a big adventure. And I know from the past, whenever I went into a race, just wanting to have fun, wanting to have a good adventure, that's actually when I did the best. And so, I think in the past coaches would say those things don't go hand in hand, but now it's obvious to me that they do. And I love that a lot of coaches are starting to pick up on that. And it's also great for longevity. It's great for happiness, not only in running, but throughout your life. So it's fun to be in a place where I can spread that message where joy and running well can and should always go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And you do such a great job of that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, I work with a lot of triathletes with their nutrition, and they are, age groupers who have reached a point in their life where they may be married with children, they're successful in their career, and the next thing for them to do is to go and do an Ironman. It's almost like a next step in, the path of their life. And it's very serious, and it's all attention is sort of focused on getting maximal power on the bike, putting together the 3 components to then go and have the race of their life, qualify for Kona, and along the way you do lose joy in a lot of the process, because you get so focused on that outcome, which means that sort of when, if an injury occurs or you don't get a very good race under your belt, then not only you get quite anxious about that racing situation, but you lose a lot of the reason why you sort of picked it up in the first place and got into the sport. I see it lots.
Exactly. It happens way too much. And that's something like I see all the time too. But it can be fun to help people reframe that. And what I say a lot is like sometimes like if you notice like you're not feeling well, and it could just be like going into a negative place, sometimes you just need to take that moment to stop and listen to yourself, because so many people don't do that. That you're going down like this bad trend and like it's becoming less fun and you're getting stressed out about it and it doesn't feel good. And so like when you start not feeling good for too long, that's always a sign to like stop and be like, what's the better thought here? How do I reframe this? And that's something that I tell my athletes. It's probably really annoying, and I annoy myself with it too. Is like, take that moment to stop when you're not feeling good and be like, okay, well, what's a better thought that I can start to like feel better, and how can I build momentum off of those good thoughts?
Absolutely. And I think in one of your most recent videos, you talked about an experience on a trail where previous to that experience, you'd had some bad news in your family. And, so the last time you were on that trail, it was an emotional time for you. It was a really sad sort of time. And you acknowledged that it's actually, it's absolutely fine to feel that way. But it's also really good that you can then sort of, focus on having a different, more positive experience and not moving on from it, acknowledging it yet and giving it space yet. And it's okay to feel better, and it's okay to have more positive experiences and thoughts.
Exactly. And so like I lost my sister last year, and like I really was being like, okay, it's normal to grieve and go down that route. And I wasn't unhappy, but I definitely felt like I lost some of my joy for life. And, then it took a while for me to like realize, like, stop to think about this and choose something better. Like it took months, or like most of the year almost. But then I was obviously always going to feel bad. Like my heart broke when my sister died. But at the same time, like anybody who loves me, here on this earth or who already passed away, I know wants me to be happy and just get so much out of this life. And even though like this really sad thing happened, and it really hurt me, there's so much in this life to enjoy. And I still have so many good people around me. I created a life that I truly love. And so, I can still be sad, but put a lot of my attention on things that bring me joy. And honestly, like through this whole process, I almost feel like my sister who passed away is like just so proud of me. And she's like, yes, this is what I wanted for you. And so even though like there's still some grieving there, like I feel really good about that.
Yeah. Sandi, you've got a real presence online, like you sort of sit in a really, like quite a public space and you share a lot. Did that help you through the last year, or did you feel some sort of anxiety and pressure around that? So, or have you not really thought about it? But I was, I'm really interested to sort of, how you negotiate that sort of space.
That's another really good question. I honestly think it more came from me feeling more motivated to do it, because YouTube, when I started out, it was something like my partner Sage had kind of influenced me to do, but it was a really, really hard space for me. And actually kind of going back to like things you can remember from when we were kids. Like I remember this girl in 8th grade telling me I was a waste of space because I didn't talk enough, because that's how shy I was and how much social anxiety I had, where I just like, I would literally like just not talk because I was too afraid to say anything. And so when I first started YouTube, like I remember Sage trying to get me to do a YouTube video, and I was just in tears. I'm like, this is not a good place for somebody with social anxiety. But I also had, I think over the past few years, and I kind of like developed this want to overcome it. Like I felt like maybe I could say something that would help people, and I knew maybe overcoming my fear of speaking in public is something I could overcome. And YouTube was a good place for me to do it in a way that was not comfortable, but it was easier than like getting up in front of a large audience right away. Because as you know, you like edit things out, which is kind of nice sometimes. And I do it quite a bit because I still stumble over my words all the time, or things just don't come out right because I'm overthinking it. But I think it really came from that where, you know, you realize like things happen and I got motivated to like really want to explore my potential in this life and overcome fears and, well, at least try to overcome things that were holding me back, and also try to help people along the way. And so that's why I kind of got motivation to start posting on YouTube more consistently.
And I get a real sense, well, one of, I think, authentic and genuine. People say that they're overused words, but I mean, that's exactly what I feel when I'm like watching something that you put up, Sandi. You know, you really don't, despite the number of edits that you know, might or might not do, like you are a very real presence online. And that's, you know, when there are so many other people out there in the same space, but it's much more, and this is, I don't know how this will sound, but I'll say, you know, much more curated, much more sort of produced. It feels like you're being not told a story, but, you know, you're getting a side that they want you to show, that they want you to see. Whereas with you, you're very like, this is how it is, regardless of the fact it took you 15 times to sort of, you know, take the tape to show us how it is. But that's the sort of, that's what, I think you're very successful with that. The other thing I notice about you and Sage as well, and this I noticed last year when I think I went online and bought a couple of your programs, is that you're very accessible. And as I understand it, obviously you need to build a career from this, and you know, you need to like pay your bills and stuff, but you certainly don't put yourself in this we're only high end. Like I get a real sense of service from Higher Running and what you provide. Sort of what inspired that and what sort of motivated you down that path? Because of course, with both of you, you could easily, given your profiles, do it in quite a different way and be successful in a different way, I think.
Yeah, so service, that's definitely one of our core qualities. And like that's something everybody who's part of Higher Running knows is like if service first, because when we're not, like people can tell that. Like if we're just in it for the money, people are gonna know that. But if I truly believe like if you want to be a service to people, you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to get a loyal following and hopefully a successful company because people realize that you care. So that's a really big value, or it's just a value of our company. And I think I always had that in me. But part of the reason like our plans are so affordable is because, you know, I started out ultra running when I was in college. And I had a really hard time just affording race fees for ultras, let alone like travel and shoes and hydration packs. Like people think running's a cheap sport, but when you get into ultra running or trail running, that's not always true.
Yeah.
It can, especially just race fees. Like it was really hard. And like for one race, like I sold my bike to get in it, just so I could go down. And so like I always, like we have different levels. Like that's why we have our one-on-one coaching. It's also why we have really affordable plans, because I never want anybody to feel left out. And if somebody was like really had no money to spare, like we give things away. Like it's fine. Like we're here to help, and that like that's just following our passion too. Like we really love what we do, and we love talking about running, and so it's just a joy for us to be able to follow our passion and to help as many people as we can. And hopefully that have them become passionate about running as well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I totally agree with you that running isn't cheap. The only people that say running is cheap are not runners, I think. You
exactly,
yeah. Yeah. Oh, and my sister, who cannot believe what I spend on race fees, when she's like, oh my goodness, that you paid that to run that distance? What? Like, very different. Sandi, you and Sage together as well. How long have you been together now?
About 8.5, coming up on 9 years. So it's been a hot minute now.
And how long have you been in the biz together?
Oh, probably 7-ish, maybe 8 years. So like it's probably like only a year year and a half to 2 years, probably like a year and a half after we started dating.
Yeah.
Kind of like, Sage was kind of doing a little bit of coaching, and that woman had asked me to coach. And I was kind of just had the idea of like, we should just combine forces. Like, I think we'd work well together. And so that's kind of how it took off.
Yeah. And obviously 8 years later, your initial thought that it could work well together was obviously correct, because you're still working together and living together, and you've actually addressed that, I believe, in a YouTube channel, like how you managed to live in a studio apartment, work together, but also, you know, have a successful, I suppose, business relationship and relationship. Like, it can't always be easy.
No, I'm pretty open to an extent about that, where it is hard sometimes. And I honestly think sometimes in the summer it's easier because we go on mountain trips a lot. And so it's easier to like separate work from our relationship at times. It's also sometimes like I've been very open. Like sometimes it'd be nice to have a door to like an office where like, and just put like a sign on it and be like, I'm working right now. Don't bug me for a little bit. Cause I'm definitely somebody like I like, it helps me to be creative and focused when I just like lock myself in a room. But Sage is always ready to talk, which is not my personality. And so like there's a balance sometimes, and trying to be good about that. Sometimes it works out where like he is a night owl and I'm not necessarily a morning bird, but I would definitely wake up like hours earlier from him. And so it kind of does create like this natural time where we have to ourselves. And technically, like, we're in a studio, so we're still together, but one person is sleeping, so we can kind of pretend we're by ourselves for a little bit. But it definitely has its challenging aspects, and it's something that is just, like, a continual work in progress, as it should be. Because, I feel like we're never going to be the same people, and I never want to be the same person I was a few years ago, so we're always changing, and hopefully we're always growing together and doing it in a positive way. So yeah,
totally. No, I love that. And that, you know, you've got that shared passion for running, and so my husband, he's an avid trail runner as well. And I say as well, to be fair, I'm relatively new to trail. I'm much more like, I love road running, and I know that sounds, well, road runners can appreciate that, but I love them both. I'm just a little bit gammy on the trails, but I'm beginning to like sort of, as I get older, it's much more forgiving to go out on a trail because you can walk, which is amazing. Whereas if you're walking during a road run, you're just feeling like, oh, I really should not be out here. But you seem to be each other's big supporters, which is so great to see. Sandi, Sage had a health scare earlier this year. How was that? Like, what actually happened, and how did you discover that he was having that he had pulmonary
that's
embolism?
correct.
Is that right?
It's really a crazy story. And now we heard tons of stories from people since that, like, it's not that uncommon. But what happened is, like, he started experiencing kind of like chest pains, and so after it's probably like took him few weeks where he experiencing this pain, where he went in, saw a doctor, got an x-ray on his chest, and they're like, oh, you have pneumonia. And so we thought it was pneumonia for about a month. And after a while, like, it kind of seemed like Sage was getting better, but then he kind of had a relapse. And like, so like a month after maybe that first scan, he woke up and he's like, wow, my chest really hurts. And I'm like, well, you should go to the ER then. And so we went to the ER. I think it was the end of May. And first they just, like, I don't know, I was still thinking, like, is pneumonia, or thinking it's not that bad? And they just start running, like, test after test after test on him. And then we were both kind of, like, freaking out. It's like, they wouldn't be running this many tests if something wasn't, like, serious. But luckily, like, on that day, they found out he had blood clots in both his lungs. And so, pulmonary embolism. But good news is, so, like, he was on blood thinners for 3 months. He's been off blood thinners for, I think, over 2 weeks now, which is exciting for Sage because he gets his life back, or he can at least do, like, mountain stuff. And, like, the really good news we just got a couple days ago is he did some genetic testing, unfortunately, like, the order got screwed up, so they didn't do all the tests they were supposed to. But they did the 2 big tests that are like most common for like genetic testings for these types of issues, and they came back negative, which is awesome.
That is great.
And so they're still like, we're not going to know what caused this, and that's what all the doctors have said. Like, we will probably never know what caused it, and there's always that fear it's going to happen again. But to know, like, this is definitely a sign where he doesn't have to go back on blood thinners. And so Sage can play in the mountains, because when he's on blood thinners, like, he's very worried, or you're not supposed to go in the mountains and do rocky terrain, because if you hit your head, that could be very serious and life threatening. So he couldn't get hurt on blood thinners.
Yeah.
So now, like, he's doing mountain stuff again, and he's really happy about that. There's still, like, a little unknown. He definitely had scarring in his lungs from the blood clots, and we don't know exactly how that's going to resolve, but he's starting to build back his training now, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how frightening that must have been at the time, when you were just unsure of what it was, but then to get the diagnosis, and then sort of how long it might take to resolve and get back to doing what he loved, like. And also you, obviously, as his not wife, there beside him, sort of living through it. Like, it's always hard when you get those experiences.
Yeah, well, I think, like, he had, like, blood clots for a month, and we were just, like, we found, and we're like, oh my God, you've been walking around with these blood clots for a month. Like, you could have died at any moment. And so there's definitely some gratitude from that, but it has been a struggle for Sage to, like, go through this entire process, because he's so used to being healthy and, like, not having any issues, where this is, like, a real challenge for him that he hasn't had before. But he is, like, naturally, like, a very positive and energetic person.
Yeah.
And so he's handled it pretty well. It hasn't been easy, but, like, it has been nice that, like, he never, like, went into the, like, this deep hole. Like, he just has that, like, kind of, like, natural positive outlook on things.
Yeah, no, that's obviously going to be much more helpful than sort of the glass is half empty type personality. Sandi, you enjoy a beer, am I right?
I do, yes.
Yeah. I love, so I've been to Boulder once, and for a conference in 2016, and what is the main street called? Beginning with
Pearl Street.
There you go, Pearl Street. And I remember having a beer on Pearl Street, and so I loved seeing you guys, like, go out and about. Favorite beer?
Oh, I can't choose in Boulder. There's too many. Oh, but actually, so, like, it's fall here now, so it's, like, pumpkin season now.
Oh yeah.
I can't. It's like the Atomic Pumpkin. Sage is gonna be like, how do you not know the name of this? But there's a really good pumpkin beer that comes out every year, and it's probably my favorite.
Is it like a stout? Is it an IPA? Is it a...
No, I wouldn't even call it that. I don't know. I'm not, Sage is going to laugh at me. Actually, you know what? Maybe it is an IPA, because normally I don't like IPAs, but I think this one is, like, such strong pumpkin and spice flavor where I actually like it. So you're right. Maybe it is an IPA. I can just see Sage laughing at me now. Not remembering the name.
Is he sponsored by a beer company? Am I right about that?
He is. So here in Boulder, there's Avery Brewing, and it's actually, like, one of the bigger craft beer companies in Boulder. So he's sponsored by them.
That is a life goal of mine, to be honest.
I love it, yeah.
I need to reach out to our breweries here. I think that's my next step. Any podcasts you listen to, Sandi? What inspires and motivates you?
I listen to a variety of podcasts. I've been listening to yours. I really enjoyed the one with, like, Luke Cool. He had good some insight. I listen to Ritual a lot. Let me think. I've been listening to, like, the Pillars podcast with Dylan Bowman, but he also has, like, a segment with 3 women that kind of like talk together, and that's been fun. I don't know. I browse through so many podcasts. Like, a lot of them are running, but it is fun to, like, get outside of running and think a little bit differently too.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree, because so much of, and I know that you'll probably agree with me. Listen to me, I'm so positive about this. But you know, you take so many lessons from running, and they transfer to life. But equally, a lot of what you hear outside with other things can equally transfer to sort of running and how you feel about it and how you perform and things like that. That's what, you know, it's the joy of kind of being a lifelong learner, which I kind of feel you sort of, that's what you do and that's what you are.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a perfect way to say it. And like, I do have that intention very much, just to learn and grow as much as possible.
Yeah, nice, Sandi. Well, thank you for your time. There are so many other things that I could ask you, but I feel like this is probably like a nice place for us to finish up, and I'm respectful of the fact that it's, Thursday afternoon. You've probably got, plans to write.
Yeah, that's true.
So very good luck for your race coming up. Is it the Broken Arrow? Is that the one?
It is. Yep. Got Broken Arrow.
Awesome. Well, I hope you go out and have like, a fantastic time. And I look forward to seeing your next YouTube video about it.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you ever come to Boulder again, let me know. We'll have a beer. We'll go for a trail run. I would absolutely love that. And I just love talking to you and your insight and how kind and passionate you are. So it's a really pleasure to have this type of conversation with you. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you, Sandi. And I'm so holding you to that, like legit.
Oh, for sure.
Beer in Boulder.
I would love that.
All right, team. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was such a pleasure to chat to Sandi, and I really am looking forward to sort of what Higher Running has in store in the coming years, and seeing how her and Sade sort of build their selves back up in Saladina as well. Next week on the podcast, I'm thrilled to bring to you my conversation with Lou Heller, who is a personal stylist actually, but she and I work in a very similar industry of transformation. And so we talk all about that and Lou's own transformation next week. Until then though, you can find me over on Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, on Instagram and Twitter at Mikki Williden, or over on my website, mikkiwilliden.com, where you can book an individual consultation or sign up to any one of my meal plans that are directly created to help you improve your sport performance or lose body fat or give yourself a little bit of a keto longevity reset, or just help you make better decisions around the food so you don't have to do the thinking for yourself. That is over on my website, mikkiwilliden.com. All right, team, have a great week. See you later.